My name is Alice Lowe, and my ancestors are from China and Indonesia. I emigrated to Canada as a settler along with my family and lived in East York. I'm currently living in Scarborough. I would like to recognize the existence of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis by acknowledging that we are on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Wendake Nyonwensito. In this place that is known today as East York and Scarborough of the Greater Toronto Area. I have a responsibility as a beneficiary of this land to acknowledge and understand its history and the current experiences of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people, and to be accountable for the hardships they continue to face. I must use this understanding to inform our work to ensure we do not maintain the harms of colonization and begin to repair them. Today, the meeting place of the Greater Toronto Area is still the home to the First Nations, to the Inuit peoples, and Métis people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on their land. Hello everyone, my name is Sage Lovell. Welcome to another episode of Deaf What Interview. Today we are interviewing Alice Lowe. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for this interview. As you know, we've been involved with the Deaf What project since 2017 as a photographer and editing videos. It's been such a great experience working with you. I learned more about you and how you've arrived to this point. So my first question for you is, when the COVID pandemic first started, how did it impact you? At the beginning of the pandemic, we went on lockdown and it was challenging. Before it all happened, I tended to walk outside within the city of Toronto, taking pictures as part of my hobby. When lockdown happened, I wasn't able to go out for walks around Toronto like I used to, so I could no longer photograph. I wasn't able to go out for almost 3 or 4 months like I used to. Instead, I had to nourish my creative juices with photography indoors. So, for example, with self portraits, fascinating objects, different things. I did that because I wanted to keep my mind filled with creative ideas. Other work on the side as a freelancer that I've been focusing on includes designing logos, translation, filming, editing, captioning. All of it was going just fine. After the lockdown restrictions loosened up a little, I was able to go back on my walks and do my photography sprees again, a little bit by bit, not like I used to, depending where I'd go, especially avoiding crowded areas, taking photos in less crowded areas. So it's really casual. I also designed some ideas for t-shirt designs for the remainder of the year. Absolutely. COVID is a big change in many of our lives, and it's a good thing to keep busy and continue investing in your hobbies. Not like, well, I know folks who are depressed, and so, it's really important to keep going. So I'm curious about your journey as an artist. How did you start? It's a good question. To be honest with you, I never really considered myself as an artist at the beginning of my journey in the workplace post graduation. Before graduation, I majored in photography and I minored in graphic design, a visual media program. Even though I knew these specialties were part of my future career, I didn't see myself as an artist. Not until I worked with you for the Deaf What project. You shared your experiences with me. I met other artists who shared their experiences, and that's when I realized that being an artist does not require a certain level of talent in painting or photography. Well, more like abstract photography over portraiture. I realized that it doesn't matter because art is all about the expression of the artist's thoughts and feelings. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel that everyone's an artist in their own way. Each person has their own way of expression from their minds, hearts, and emotions. Now, I know myself as an artist specializing in photography and design. Absolutely. So many of us are artists and we don't realize it. Just like I was ignorant about my role as an artist. I mean, I write, I interview, I act, etc. Oh, I am an artist, true biz. And I think also being deaf has influenced how we experience the world at large, limiting us. So maybe accepting that label as an artist is limited to what our perspective of what we think an artist should look like, a certain level of fame, popularity, status. But that's not the reality. We're already expressing ourselves as creatives as we make art. So I know you use film photography, and I wondered if you could explain how you got into that field. Sure. During my college years, I studied photography, and in the beginning, we worked with film photography, learning how to use the film properly. Well, not as intensively in regards to the layers of film negatives themselves. I don't really care about that. When it comes to the hands on aspect of photography, like developing the film negatives into photo prints, that's what I was fascinated with. I loved working in the darkroom for a number of years until digital cameras became popularized, and I shifted my focus to that. I forgot all about film for a while. I just focused on digital photography. It was easier to use as it was more cost effective, as we didn't need to spend money on the film itself. So I used digital photography for years in my work until 2017. And that's when I was scrolling through the Instagram feed until something caught my eye. Someone posted a picture with film photography origins. And I was like, oh, that's right. That photo made me nostalgic looking back at my first few years, where I would extensively work with film and being in the darkroom environment. And I thought about it and was like, okay, that's it. I decided to look up film-based point-and-shoot cameras on Kijiji. Found one, purchased it. I was lucky to get that one because my father had leftovers of that specific type of film that I needed for the camera. It was just sitting there for many years. My dad never threw them out, and I was like, oh, thank you. So I used the camera and the film, sent the negatives to be developed. Once I got the pictures back, I looked at them and I felt so inspired. I decided from that point on, I would use film for my own enjoyment and for select projects. Since then, I've been seeking and purchasing vintage cameras and medium format cameras. So from that point on, I still use these types of camera and I just love it. So I've been using film photography since then. Of course, I still will use digital cameras for work, headshots, and event photography. For the film, I'll use that for select art projects. And that's how I became immersed in film photography. I researched photographers who use film photography, and it gives me more feels. It just makes me really admire those photographers. Yeah, for sure. Digital photography is easier for access for everyone, while film photography is more of a challenge, but it's fascinating to have that tactile feeling of the photo print itself. The cool part about working with film photography is you don't know what the image is going to look like until after you've processed it, so it means you work harder to get the outcome you want to see, using the right lighting and angles, and it's more of an art form in and of itself. It takes many years to develop and evolve the kind of talent with film photography. The quality is just lovely. So, do you have any advice for any IBPOC deaf artists? Don't let other people limit or restrict you. You need to take up space. It's important to focus on yourself and your passions. If there's something you want to do it. Continuing doing your work no matter what you're going through, even with the obstacles you face, that commitment, that will help elevate your talent. Keep going until you see the results from showing your passion. You deserve recognition for the hard work you do. Make sure you share your knowledge with others, with artists, with people who look up to you, to share together, to develop art. Especially with collaborations? Yeah, collaboration. Yeah, collaboration. Working together gives you that extra boost of ideas, of being able to reach the steps to success, and it will benefit you. Also, my advice based on my experience, try your best to open up. Don't be afraid to show your artwork. I admit, I used to photograph many subjects, but I wouldn't show my work as I was hiding my talent. And it's important to try and show your work because many of us, especially deaf youth, need to see that deaf artists exist. To show that they are capable of showing their artwork, and in return, it inspires others to show their art. This is something I realized and I needed to open up, and of course, I couldn't fully open up within a day. Take your time to open up, get the recognition you deserve, and share your artwork with everyone across Canada. That's my advice. Thank you for sharing your advice. And yes, I completely agree with you. I want to see more of you artists out there opening up. And I know it can be nerve-wracking and anxious, but you have to do it. You have ideas, you have dreams, do it. We believe in you and support you. Right. My favorite question is up next. What's something that gives you joy? Joy. What gives me joy the majority of the time? Being outdoors, camping, hiking, The reason behind that is being outdoors helps me get my mind off things related to stress, if I'm overthinking, thinking about what I need to do. And that just dissolves when I walk outdoors, seeing nature around me. That's when you really take the time to truly appreciate nature. As you walk through nature, it will feel refreshing for your mind to de stress afterwards, and you'll feel more energized to do things. Come up with more ideas for your projects. Who knows? I also love photo walks as well. For example, heading out to the downtown core or even while driving, not really going anywhere, just looking for something nice to photograph. When I find that, I'll pull over, make sure there's no traffic, set up photography, and get the image. That's what I enjoy doing as of recently. I'd like to do more of that. Now we live in a world that is designed for hearing people. Hearing people take up 95%, and deaf people are only 5% of the population. Do you have any advice for the hearing world? Yes, I do. My advice for hearing people is to keep an open mind and keep your hearts open to deaf people. Recognize deaf art. Also, don't be afraid to interact with deaf persons, especially freezing on the spot when encountered instead of trying to figure out how to communicate. Don't be afraid to ask, how can I communicate with you? How can I improve access? Don't be afraid to ask questions and take some action. I hope that hearing people can recognize the artistic skills that deaf people have and elevate them, include them in galleries. Many galleries, especially in Toronto, even in Canada and worldwide, they show a spectrum of artists, but lack representation of deaf and disabled artists. Sure, some galleries feature deaf and disabled artists, but that's a very small pool of galleries. This is something that needs to become more mainstream to give them the recognition that they deserve. For example, one deaf artist finally achieved that international level of recognition. Christine Sun Kim, and I'm happy she's gotten that recognition, but other deaf artists deserve that level of recognition. I know that here in Toronto we have Tangled Art and Disability, and I'm grateful for that. I expect more out of other galleries to become inclusive like Tangled is in terms of including deaf, disabled, and BIPOC individuals. Mainstream galleries need to, as I said before, open their minds, open their heart in order to make a welcoming environment for disabled and deaf artists to present their work. It's time to elevate the artists. I mean, it's 2021. I feel that the stigma we faced in the past is still experienced today. Nowadays, people are recognizing disability activism. I mean, you can see people with disabilities all around you, everywhere. Why aren't we bettering our practices to be more inclusive to people with disabilities? Why aren't we giving them access? I encourage people to open their minds and hearts and not be afraid of deaf artists. Absolutely. We definitely need more deaf and disability representation and include them in the mainstream society rather than pushing them off to the margins, making them a special group. No, we need to integrate. Yes, it's nice to be part of a specialized group, but I want to see everywhere being that inclusive and become the standard. Just like how Christine Sun Kim has that notoriety, I want to see more deaf and disabled artists have that. We deserve that. We know that more people can become deaf and disabled in the future as they lose their hearing or vision when they become older. As more people become disabled, it would be beneficial to have access accommodations ready for everyone. Having that representation makes us realize that we're not truly alone. There is a community out there. So, do you have any tips or advice for deaf people who may be struggling or uncertain? Don't be afraid. Keep going. Don't give up. Just continue what you're doing. No matter what, even if you're experiencing backlash, negativity, or bullying, it's okay to break down and cry because it makes you stronger over time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I know it can be tough. It can be challenging to work with some people, and sometimes their struggles, they can impact you. It's important to stand your ground, stay strong, and it's also okay to ask for help. Absolutely, I agree. So that's it for now, Alice. Thank you for participating in the interview for the Deaf What Legacy project. I also want to thank the Canada Council of the Arts for the funding of this project. Cheers. Thank you. Cheers.